Oh, whoops. Little mistake there, folks. Sorry about that. Howdy. There we go, round two. It's no fun if you're live and you don't screw up occasionally, right? So that's half of the fun. We all mess up, and that's the beauty. We get to model that for you. So I'm Doug Cothey. I'm the founder of People Smart Group and also the Organizational Health Collective. And People Smart Group, we do consulting work with organizations, helping them build healthier organizations, better teams, get better clarity, better alignment in their company so they can get better results and better productivity. And then the Organizational Health Collective is a gathering of consultants that are focused on those same things and practitioners focused on those things. And we work hard to help each other get better at what we do. So that's my quick one. How about you?
I'm Dr. Terry, Generator Coaching Consulting, and my partner's Christine, and we work together doing very similar things as to what Doug does at the People Smart Group. We work with companies to help their teams work more productively, communicate better, and get better results because everybody knows what's going on and communicates it well.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Thanks, Terry. Well, welcome, folks. We're thrilled you're here. Today, we are going to dive in. Last week, we looked at people's missions and visions and what in the world are they doing with them, and how do you come up with a helpful mission and vision statement for your company and that it actually applies to your company and it's actually lived. Well, this week, we decided we should take the next step and go to values. And if you've looked at company values over time, we'll look at some today, just like we did last week. But if you've looked at company values, your head might have spun going, really? Is that true? I think back a little bit to Enron and their company value being integrity. Oh, wait, that was before the lawsuits, right? And before the company collapsed. Right. We all believed that they had integrity. No problem. That was their top value. I mean, it was on the wall. It must have been true, right? They probably had a T-shirt.
I think I have a friend who used to say, sometimes people want to appear a certain way so that they can do what they want to do without problem. And so integrity fits into this. I want to appear honest or like I have integrity so I can do the stuff that I'm doing without question. And it's kind of funny when we look at it like that. It's like, oh, okay, so are we living it? Are we putting it up there so people think we're that? And Enron is a very good example of people who are attempting to do something that maybe is a little more nefarious. And I mean, the reality is there's a number of people that probably worked there that didn't really know what was going on, but there was a few people that really did. And there was a few people really took advantage of the fact that they're using integrity, the flag of integrity, to take in a whole bunch of money that shouldn't be taken in.
And that's a commonality within financial institutions, right? They all want to have integrity as a value because they want you to believe in them, right? Because they have to have integrity to actually, for you to want to give them your money or do anything for you, right? But sorry, but that doesn't always prove true, right? I mean, I think of the latest case of Wells Fargo with all their making up fake accounts and all that jazz because, oh, wait, we have quotas we have to fill. And that was back in, 2006? No, it was later than that. Anyway, that whole disaster happened.
Quotas. I mean, you got to understand. We have integrity until we have quotas, and then quotas, which one comes first?
Right. And then the leadership wanted to blame all the people out there, right? It was their fault. It wasn't ours. It wasn't a leadership thing. It was them. And it's no.
At some point, probably blame the people that didn't exist because they didn't actually say, don't make an account in my name.
Right. Hey, it's not our fault. It's not my fault. Yeah. No, unfortunately, those people out on the front line actually got their values and understood them very clearly from leadership, didn't they? They understood that what mattered most was that we're getting accounts, that we're supposedly growing, that we're pushing out and making our numbers. That's what mattered.
And
not
really that's
integrity.
We'll probably get into it later, but the idea of accidental values is we say that we're these things, but then how we behave. And this is one of the reasons that
Yeah.
we actually ask the question instead of what are your values, how do you behave? Because
Yep.
how you behave and how it shows up is how we can actually look at what your values really are.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. And so often companies want to list a set of values, but that's not really what they are. And so sometimes we figure out along the way, how are we really behaving? And so one of the key features, I think, is so many organizations, they set their values based on marketing, or they set it based on their aspirations of who we want to be or think we should be. I live down in Houston, and so I'm around the energy industry a ton, and everything's about safety, right? Everyone is the best company in safety. But well, how can everyone be the best company at safety? I don't understand. But to me, that what they're saying in essence is really it's permission to play to actually have a certain level of safety. Or for a financial company, it's permission to play to have a certain level of integrity. If you can't exist as a financial company, right? And we see that in the scandals that happen, and all of a sudden those companies either do horrible or have a huge recovery because they've got egg on their face. Or in the safety issues, if you screw up in that area, guess what? You're going to have a whole lot of egg on your face, and you're going to have to make a whole lot of changes to actually live that out. But that's not your core value. That's just your permission to play, unless, of course, you actually are at the top of the industry, right?
Absolutely. And I think that one of the things that I find with values, number one, I don't like to call them values because that's just as amorphous as what values are.
Right.
Right? Values. When I say values, everybody goes, "Oh, I know what that is," but then they come up with all of these abstract words like integrity or whatever. But really, what are the behaviors that you value in your company? And so the permission to play values, I actually call them pay to play, but the idea of permission to play is permission to have a role in our company, whether it's a janitor, whether it's a CEO. You have to have this kind of value to just be in our establishment. And that's something that's really important to distinguish. And then we talk about the idea of what are our core values. Those are different than permission to play. And then, of course, we talk about aspirational values. And one of the things that I see a lot of people do is they just lump them all together, and they don't really understand or take a moment of intention. I'll just say it that way. I was going to say a longer word that just doesn't need to be said. But they need to step back and with intention, think about what they're trying to create in the behavior of their people and how they're going to model that behavior to have it work through the whole institution, however big it is. And I don't think people do that. I think that they do it as a nod to, well, people say we should have values, so we're just going to throw these words up here, and then we're going to act completely opposite what they are sometimes, depending on how it suits us.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think that's so accurate in terms of how people approach these things. And unfortunately, I think sometimes it's nefarious. Sometimes it's just a lack of understanding what is a value, really. And sometimes
I think to your point, I think it really is much more a lack of really understanding the depth and the breadth of how much this will affect us if we don't do it, and how much it will affect us if we do it in the way that we want to be affected.
Yep. Yeah. Well said. And so, again, do people know how values apply in their organization even is that huge question. And we're going to dive into that. But before we do that, we're going to look at a few companies for you. And we've picked, I think, 5 here, big name companies you would all know. And we're just going to look at those real quick and ask some questions of them. So here we go. All right. So Apple Computers. So we looked at their mission and vision last week, so I'm not going to go there, but we will look at don't mind me. We're back to Apple. So their values, they say, are innovation, inclusion, environment, accessibility, privacy, and supplier responsibility. So one, right off the top, it's like there's a lot of them. And then two, there's some buzzwords. And the question is, are those buzzwords their values, or are those just buzzwords they threw in? Inclusion, environment, are those key, or are those really core to who they are, or are they just, hey, these are good marketing terms for us to have in our values? I don't know. What do you think, Terry?
Well, one of the things I think about is like, how do values show up? So when I was in school, I had to get an internship to get my doctorate in psychology. And the internship that I ended up receiving was an internship to be a correctional psychologist in a prison. And they said, your job, this is kind of behind the scenes, your job was actually created as a result of a lawsuit. Because two kids in the prison system that I was working in ended up committing suicide, and they weren't prepared for it or aware of it. And they got sued by the families. And so in response to the lawsuits, they brought in a whole bunch of mental health, and they put a whole new mental health program together to be sure that people were safe and be sure that they were getting mental health treatment so that this didn't happen again. And the funny thing is when I look at some place, I'm not saying Apple, but I'm saying that sometimes I look at these and I go, how much are these just like my job is a response to something, and inclusion seems like more of a response. Environment seems like more of a response, and privacy seems like more of a response to pressure rather than, hey, this is what we really stand for. It's like, no, we do that too. And it's like, it doesn't, how does it show up? How does inclusion show up? Now, I honestly believe that inclusion does show up because all of the older generation that don't know how to work things have a better time with the Apple phones and the Apple iPads and things like that. But is it for everybody?
Yeah.
Do they have a way that everybody is included?
Right. Yeah. That's a great question.
What does inclusion mean?
Yep. Well, and we talk about with values, right? I mean, these things should be core to how we make decisions in our organization, to what we do, what we decide to do. And like, I mean, this is true of so many companies, so I'm not trying to just slam Apple, but you put environment on there, and yet you produce most of your materials in probably the biggest environmental offender of a country, China, out there. And so how does that work? I mean, was that a part of your decision of where do we create our stuff? Did that play out? I mean, because here you are, you're encouraging and promoting one of the biggest offenders in terms of destruction of environment.
Well, and I'll be devil's advocate for a second. I'll go, well, they went over there to reduce cost.
Yeah.
Okay. So passed on. So then, not being devil's advocate or being the devil's advocate, double devil.
Wow.
Is that reduced cost passed on to the end user so that they are included easier, or is it actually included in net profits? So how is that environmental decision? Because environment, besides, what does that mean? Environment is a value.
It's pretty obtuse.
My value is environment. Like the computer environment, the clean room that they're making the pieces. What kind of environment are we talking about?
Right.
And so we don't know what that means. Innovation.
True.
I am 100% on board with their innovation. I'm 100% with accessibility. They are very, very accessible. It's very easy. In fact, I can call people when I don't even mean to.
Oh yeah.
My phone turns on whenever I say that S word. And then I'm in Ace Hardware yesterday getting a piece for my backyard, and all of a sudden I'm on the phone with a friend of mine I didn't call. Very accessible. I love they're accessible.
Privacy, they've upped their privacy game for sure. But I would ask the question, and again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist too often, but is that about the end user, or is that about Google collecting all the information they didn't want them collecting?
Right. And so and the take home message is we are kind of beating these up a little bit, but it's not for the purpose of beating Apple up. It's
Yeah.
really to bring out and be clear ourselves that when we're looking at values within a company, the thing that we want to know is, are these values actually providing clarity to
Yeah.
make communication easier, to pull people towards our vision and bring them on board of what we're doing, to attract the
Yeah.
right people, to really reduce turnover? Are we doing
Yeah.
it to decrease our micromanaging, or are we doing it to serve the public so we look good?
Right. Yep.
And
Well,
that's the
and
question that I always start with is, why did you pick these values?
yeah. And again, not and like you said, we're not just sitting here trying to tear them apart or to rip Apple or something, but I do want to make the point in tearing them apart of there should be clarity in what your values are. And so the people should understand, well, yeah, that's totally how Apple behaves. I shouldn't question it. It should be true. It should be real. It should be lived. And it's like, okay, if I can sit there and pick some of your big decisions and say, this doesn't seem to fit that, or I can just go, yeah, this sounds like a buzzword, but I'm not sure if it fits you. Or it doesn't even make any sense to me. I can't figure out what does it mean, environment, that you said it so broadly and so vaguely that it's like, what is that? And so the idea of your values is they have to be really true of who you are.
Absolutely.
They have to be true of how you live. And if I could sit here and question them, and you can sit here and question them, that's got a problem. That's a problem for Apple. That seems like you're putting some words out there that you want to get cred for.
So interesting enough, it just triggered the idea that I had to do a dissertation for my doctorate as well. And it seems like I'm talking a lot about my schooling for a minute, but I had to do a dissertation. And one of the things that anybody in higher education, their capstone project or their dissertation or their clinical research project, whatever it is that they have to do, the last step in that before you actually are granted your diploma and get the tassel moved over to the other side, if you have that, is you have to defend your stance. Right? I had to defend my dissertation. I had to defend my clinical research project. And that defense basically is, okay, that's what you said. Where is your evidence for it? How did you go about collecting your evidence? And how are you presenting it that we can go, okay, yes, that makes sense. And then how are you going to behave based on what you presented to us? How does that actually indicate how you're going to behave as a result of this? And honestly, I think that some people do a clinical research project, or some people do a dissertation or whatever it is, and they then stop doing that after they do that, and they go, you know what, really, I'm not gonna even pay attention to the research or the direction I was going for that. I was just doing it to pass the assignment. Now that I've got this, now I'm going to go in a different direction. And then there's other people who go, no, this is my life's work, and I'm going to continue on adding to the body of knowledge, adding to the body of experience, adding to the research to really draw this out and bring light to it. And I think about that when I'm thinking about values is, are you able to defend the values that you say you have through your behavior so that what you were saying, Doug, is absolutely clear that, yep, those people believe in innovation and they value it and they live it. Those people value accessibility. Those people, and by the way, isn't accessibility and privacy like two ends of the spectrum?
Right? Yeah.
And honestly, at first glance, I could say that. I can guess, I can jump to go, accessibility is meaning something completely different than what they're trying to go for with privacy, but I can't tell by looking at it. I have to think about it. And then I have to do the defending or the prosecuting for them with that. And what would be really good is if people start realizing when they're doing their values that there's some kind of operationalization of them so we know what the heck they mean.
Yep. Well said. Well said. I love all that. Yeah. I mean, just that sense of lived reality, right? Operationalizing it. I like that word for it. Is, are we putting feet to this, or is it just something that's ethereal? So that's next one coming up on Google, since we knocked on Apple for a little bit there. But Google's, they got diversity in there as well. So again, is that question of a buzzword, or is that real? I don't know. I'm not saying it is or isn't. I'm just throwing it out there. It hits me as a buzzword. Accountability. What accountability to what? And what are the standards? And what does that mean? And innovation, I totally get.
An owner of everything, how do you be accountable?
Right. Exactly.
Are you accountable to the general public? Are you accountable to your shareholders? Are you accountable to your employees? Who are you accountable to?
Yeah.
The government? The super PACs?
Right. Yeah. I mean, who is it? And how do you, I've heard of different industries even where certain things have been sort of kicked out of the algorithm for search. And it's like, okay, if that's the case, then who are you accountable for that? Who are you accountable to make that decision? That your users who search, that want to find something, can't find something because you decided, well, we don't want that to show up.
Right. Honestly, I think that they're very, very good. Google is very good at helping my partner find anything she's looking for on Google. I can't find a damn thing.
Yeah.
I always end up at a cat video. I'm like, how did I didn't ask for that.
And of course, so they don't have accessibility up here. So I guess maybe that they're not worried about that. But they are supposedly focused on the user, which you are, Terry. So I don't know. But I mean, again, how does this define how?
But
Google
honestly, it doesn't say how they're focusing on the user. Are they irritating them? Or are they helping them?
Right.
Well, we're focusing on them.
As a user of Google, like accountability. So what kind of accountability is there for all the information you collect about me? And what do you do with that? What kind of accountability is there for the stuff you put in or don't put in to your now AI program, Gemini? And how does that play? So it just, those kind of questions, it's like, again, you got to live this. And, as an end user, I might have questions about, is this actually the lived reality? And so some of that is, so many companies just get convoluted about what is your values, rather than just saying, hey, these are the 3 things we live. These are who we are. This is how we behave, no matter what. We're cutting edge of innovation. Absolutely. For Google and Apple, I see that for both of them. They're at the cutting edge of innovation, right? If you want to say, our focus, or we value, I don't know, again, they're focused on the world's information, and Apple's focused on making the world a better place. If that's the case, and making the world's information available to people is their focus here at Google, it's like, okay, why is that? How does that show in those values as well, in who you are? I don't know.
Yeah.
So enough of them. Let's go to Amazon. Amazon's one in your neck of the woods over there, Terry, just a little north. So they have a customer obsession. Ownership is a value of ownership. What? Their ownership is a value, or people's ownership? What does that mean? Bias for action. Frugality. I have heard that they're very frugal with their employees, with things like the work computers and stuff of that nature being like 5-10 years old for some people and that kind of stuff. So it seems like, from what I've heard from people that have worked there, that frugality is there. High standards. Again, now you got what? 5 here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So again, I mean, it's like the focus, and I think we both talked about this. Is it 6? My bad.
No, it's 5. It's just
5.
not a commas.
Right. Yeah.
I thought obsession and customer were 2 different ones, but
they just have obsessions. They don't tell you what.
Exactly.
No, but again, it's they're very vague for the most part. I mean, a bias for action, I get that in terms of, hey, we want to be moving forward, pushing forward. And that, the innovative, wanting to stay as an innovative company, even as they got bigger, is something that I've constantly heard about Amazon's culture, and their hard driving culture for sure. But I don't, again, some of this is so vague, like ownership. I don't even know what you would do with that. And what does that
Right.
look like? Is that employees have ownership in terms of they own the things they're doing? Is it, everything we do has to work for Jeff Bezos? I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Okay, how about
really hard to say.
Yeah. So how about their neighbor Microsoft up there in Redmond? Again, you've got a couple buzzwords like diversity, inclusion, and corporate social responsibility, going with trustworthy computing and innovation. Those two I could see. The other two I just don't know. Are they, or are they just sort of buzzwords? And what does that mean? And how does that have to do with the core of who you are as a company? I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting that as we were discussing this in our pre-show, how many of them have the diversity inclusion, and was it there from the beginning, or did they just kind of add that in? Because one of the things that we talk about, especially in the beginning of a company, is the vision and the behaviors that they value of a company really don't change with the lifetime of the company. This is what we value. And diversity inclusion came on the scene, unfortunately quite recently, as the hey, we all do this, and we got our signs, and we got our celebrations of diversity, and we're doing our best. But I don't really see that diversity and inclusion were really huge until the DI community made an uproar because people weren't.
Yep.
And so if they weren't, how is this a value of a company that's been around for 30, 40 years,
Right.
or longer?
Absolutely.
Because it hasn't been. It's almost like with your red pen, you added it in, you highlighted, but they just kind of added it in. It's like, oh, and we're this.
Yep. Yeah. For sure.
And it's like, okay, so when did you become that?
Yep.
And how has it changed how you do business? Has it changed how you do business? Or did you just add it and keep doing business exactly the same way?
Yep.
Because every value, and this is just my opinion, but every value should be guiding every aspect of your organization. You're hiring, you're firing, or you're allowing people to move on. You're coaching, you're managing, your reviewing of performance, your identification of what performance should look like, your strategy, your mission. All of that is dictated or guided by your values. And so if you actually just start shoving values in there because, oh, shoot, we need to look good to the rest of the world, now one of the biggest things you've lost is integrity because you changed your values.
Yep. Well, and I love to think of it this way too. If your core purpose, your vision, and your core values, true core values, your behaviors they're the foundation of your company. And if you think about them as kind of the cornerstones your building is built upon, and then you're going to rip those out and put new ones in? I mean, you don't do that. You can't. If you're going to take down the foundation, you take down the entire building, right? To change out the foundation. And I mean, Patrick Lencioni makes the comment that if you change the values, you're starting a new company. Because it's your essence. It's who you are. If you change that core purpose, if you change those core values, you're essentially starting over as a new company.
Yeah, and getting the idea of guiding every aspect of the organization. If the organization has changed their values, like you said, it's almost a new company. These are filters for internal, how we actually interact with each other, and external, how we interact with the world. And just because I didn't have a value of diversity and inclusion in my values, if I had something that was guiding me that might be included in it, operationalized, but I don't need to
Right.
change my values to
Yep.
reflect what the world says I need to do. That's really kind of codependent in one way. And two, it's very scarcity. It's like people aren't going to buy from me if I don't say I'm diversity and inclusion. Well, that's not true. That's a fear.
Yep.
But if you're actually providing innovation, trustworthy computing, and I don't know if corporate social responsibility is really a value. But say it was just those and diversity and inclusion wasn't one of them, and they're actually socially responsible, people are going to appreciate you being those three things and do business with you because you're outdoing everyone in those and you stick to your word. And that's kind of the idea is like, yep, I can see innovation, I can see trustworthy computing, maybe. um and I personally have used Microsoft for years and years and years. I have personal computers, and I like their product. um and I have never really cared about the social responsibility that Microsoft is doing. I think it's a good thing. The diversity and inclusion, never really thought about whether that's a really big thing, but I sure want their computers to work. And for me, I would like their values, being a computer company, to be focused around making sure that what I'm buying as a product is usable, accessible, and easy, and that type of thing. And maybe that's just me, but
Mhm.
we're building computers, we're building programs, we're building software, we're making sure that your computing experience is, I'm Apple's, the way they're talking about accessibility, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
um, and so it's like, what are you going for? What is guiding your trajectory of your success as Microsoft? Is it diversity and inclusion? Okay, I think that's important. I definitely think that we don't want to not be diverse, and I don't think we want to be excluding people. But sometimes, in some situations, you know what, we're including people. What, they don't know how to actually do anything with computers at all. Oh, maybe they don't belong here. And so, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And so, really getting the meaning of the words that they're talking about, which is semantics, by the way. I want to be declaring semantics is important. It's the meaning of words. Um, and so, we want to be very clear on what we mean. And we want to be paying attention to what we're doing with this when we're really digging through how we're operating in our business to go, okay, what are our values that keep us moving towards our North Star? What
Yep.
towards our success, towards what we want to be? Or are some of these actually taking us off the path, or
Yep.
muddying our message, or making it murky to not know what we're really all about?
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, a great point, because I mean, you look at so many companies are so focused on things that have nothing to do with what they do. And
Right.
it's like, is this really who you are and how you accomplish and how you live in accomplishing what you say you're going to accomplish? Or is this just a marketing ploy? Or, I mean, sure, diversity and inclusion, maybe that's actually one of your HR policies.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
that's not, is it a value really? And how does that impact you putting the best software, the best, whatever other Microsoft products out there? Does it? But I mean, I think there's a sense in which, okay, I can say diversity of thought, diversity of input, that is huge in terms of helping you come up with the best ideas and the best products. So sure, in that sense, yeah, absolutely. But is it as a uh, societal value, what our society's talking about when they say diversity and inclusion, is that advancing you making better computer products, better software, all of those things. And again, we're not saying that it's not something you do as a company, but it's not your core values.
Right.
And so we're not knocking diversity and inclusion in any way, shape, or form. What we are saying is that really central to your values, or did you just pick it up as a buzzword? And that's my guess. And so many of these companies, they mistakenly, I think, put social issues too central to their company, and it's like, guess what? The wind changes. It did with so many of these things, and so all of a sudden, well, when the culture shifts that you're trying to sell stuff to, then what are you going to do? Oh, we got to change our values.
Right.
It's like, no. You can adapt to culture without changing your entire company.
Yeah, and I think that's very well said, and I think it bears repeating is the idea that just because there's some social focus or agenda items that we want to actually be aware of and speak to as a company doesn't mean we change our values. It means that we go, okay, these are our values. Say innovation. Innovation is one of our values. We really focus on being innovative. One of the ways we're going to be innovative is to be more diverse and focus on diversity and inclusion as an innovation to bring more people in to how we do business and to make our products more usable for those people in diverse populations, or in a way that includes more people and appreciates their vast difference of experience and lifestyle. And so that could be very, very real. But then when they go, you know what, we need to actually add that as a value, they're missing the mark. They're missing the point of what a value does. Or, corporate social responsibility is one of our values. Okay, well, one of the things in being socially responsible is to really pay attention to this idea of diversity and inclusion. This is a really big topic right now. It has been ignored for a long time. And now, as a result of that, a lot of people have been hurt and they're not taking it anymore. And we need to, as a company who is corporately responsible to society, we have to really think about how we're going to infuse diversity and inclusion in our brand to be socially responsible as a corporation. Perfect. You're using that idea of the social topic within your values. That makes perfect sense, but adding it doesn't.
Yep. Well, and here's the other piece. And this is, I don't want to beat the dead horse on Microsoft too much, but, and all of them. But, I mean, think about this. If this forms my hiring grid, am I not going to hire someone who shows up and goes, I really never thought about social responsibility. It's really not central to who I am as a person. And well, you were really good at designing software or designing the hardware we want. You're very trustworthy, it seems. You've got integrity. You're innovative, but you don't have corporate social responsibility as a guiding value in your life. We can't hire you.
Yeah.
Wow, how's that work? Is that true? Would you go to that extent? And that's the other pieces. These values should define who you would and wouldn't hire. And so I guess, so if someone doesn't give a rip about corporate social responsibility, Microsoft cannot hire them.
Or should not.
Unless it's not really a value.
Right. And there's, I think that there's so many other focuses that Microsoft or Apple or any of these that can really get into the values. How about a product that works?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How about and I'm okay with updates and things needing updates, and we get updates from Apple and we get updates from Microsoft all of the time. Like we need new drivers and blah blah blah. Great, I'm with that. But what about when the program really doesn't work? Well, we are really focused on corporate social responsibility. How about focusing on a product that people pay for that's worthy of it?
Yep.
Right? That would be fantastic if your values were to provide a product that meets your people's need that are using the product. Like that would be a great value.
Yep.
It's almost like So in the world of coaching coaches who coach, if that makes sense. If I was one of those coaches who decides I'm going to coach coaches, they have seminars all the time for these people. And so, it's like a $1 billion industry to coach coaches on how to coach, and none of them know what they're doing really. And
Those who can't do teach, is that what you're saying?
those who can't do scam. But they all have this idea that what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a webinar together. I'm going to put a 3-day seminar teaching you how to market your business, how to build your business, how to coach people, and blah, blah, blah. And you're going to freaking get all of this, blah, 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 blah. And they put a value stack, is what they call it, a value stack. And they tell you all of these things that you're going to get that are valuable. To who? How do we see it show up? How am I actually, if I'm going to go and buy this thing, receiving the value that you say is there?
Yeah.
And it reminds me of some of these companies that do their values. They just create a value stack and they go, so we're working with us, you're gonna get innovation, you're gonna get diversity inclusion, you're gonna get corporate responsibility, and you're gonna get trustworthy computing for all $9.97. And I was like, yeah, but number one, I don't need any of that particular thing. And this is back to the package. I don't need all of those things you gave me. What I need is an answer to my problem. And so for Microsoft, the value that I would get from them, that if they were behaving in a way that was valuable to the company, they would be giving products that are amazing. They would be innovative, and they would be giving me a user-friendly experience or something like that. That is, like Apple says accessibility. I think that's what they mean is a user-friendly experience, but I don't know because they didn't say that. But that's kind of what I think about. Is like, what is it going to be like to work here internally? And then what is it going to be like for the customers who buy from you externally? And what is that going to be of value for those people?
Yep.
And honestly, I think that we use that word of value, and we've devalued values.
Yeah, we have
by being abstract, by being amorphous, and really just overstating. Hey, this is a $2,000 value here. No, it's not. There's a company called Kohl's in my end of the woods. I don't know if it's on the East Coast, but it's a department store for reduced cost, but pretty good stuff. And they came out with this regular price is this, but we're giving you this stupid discount. And so you have a regular savings of $200 on this $100. You would have spent $300, but you have the savings of blah, blah, blah. And so I walk out of the store, if I'm not really thinking about what just happened, going, wow, I got $300 worth of stuff for $100. I saved $200. No, you didn't. You spent $100.
Yep.
And they put a false value on that stuff based on whatever the hell they decided. Yep. And then told me that, hey, congratulations, you saved this amount of money. No, I didn't. I spent this much. And you're creating a false value. And that's one of the things that I really think about with values when people are just putting them on the wall, or people are just thinking about, well, we need to have some values. So let's actually roll the dice. They've got all the words on there, and whatever comes up, that's our values. And I'm being a little cynical right now, but here's another example. I was in a Kroger brand store the other day, and something that I buy usually, and it was like $250 or $228 or something like that for like the last 2 years, now has the super low value price every day of $349. How's that super low value when I used to get it? I can bring out receipts and show that it was $1 less. Now it's super low value because it's $1 more.
I bet you one of their values is integrity.
Well, and in fact, if you just listen to what I said, super low value, yeah, that is very low value to me. You're right. Because you raised the price, now it's not that valuable to me anymore. Sorry. And I am not having a problem with anybody charging money for things, but don't lie to us
Right.
and don't make us feel the cynicism that we get when we look and go, that's bullshit. Sorry for the swearing, but I mean, we have got into a society of fleecing everybody by our fluffy language and frothy emotional appeal. And look, I'm an emotions guy. I focus on how we actually make people feel. And I teach people how to use emotion to help people make better decisions. And I teach them how to use emotion to create boundaries. But one thing that I have noticed, because I am so focused on emotion, is how much they use it to fleece people. And it's not right. And I really find it kind of irritating when I'm seeing this in different companies. And whether you go to a store or you look at Microsoft or whatever they're doing, it's not just Microsoft, it's everybody, because we've taught ourselves in this level of business and the climate that it is that if we just use words like value, we're valuable. And no, the value isn't what I put on it. The value of what I'm doing is what the person who I'm solving their problem has. And it also goes right back to the corporate values. I'm not putting them on there because value statements are important. I'm trying to communicate something to the people inside, which are my very first customers, because I'm paying them. And so they're receiving money from me. And that's what they buy from me. They buy money by giving me their time. So they're my first customers. And then my customers are my second customers. But I have to be providing a value to them, both sets, in order to be successful, profitable, and moving in a growth strategy sort of way, in a growth direction. And I have to be adding value. And so when I think about values, I think about the idea that what I'm talking about when I'm saying, what are the behaviors that we value? How do we behave? What I'm saying is, when you work with me, when you sit with me, when we work on your business together, these are what I'm going to deliver first and foremost, no matter what the deliverables are. And for Generator, we have direct, vulnerable, and the third one is present. And so when you work with me, I'm going to be present. I'm going to be vulnerable, and I'm going to be direct. And if that's good for you, then we're going to make some moves quickly, because those three things, what I've found is when I work with people in that fashion, we move very fast towards whatever goal we're talking about. And that's the thing I think about with values, is they get what I say they're going to get, because one, they raise their hand saying, yes, I want somebody direct. I want somebody present. I want somebody that's vulnerable. And we operationalize those, and we talk about, what does vulnerable mean? It means I'm going to put my hand up and say, I don't know when I don't know. It means I'm going to say when I make a mistake. I'm going to say what I think that is very scary for me to say. And I'm going to do it in a direct way. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm not going to kind of say thereabouts maybe what I might think, if it's okay with you. I'm going to be direct. And I expect and appreciate directness back. And I'm going to be present. I'm not on my phone. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that when I'm sitting with you listening. And that's what those mean. And everybody that sits with me gets to experience that. And they get to go, hey, you know what? These are your values, but I don't feel like you're really present right here. And then if it's true, I'll go, oh my God, you're right. I was actually thinking about the next thing I was going to say. Or, you know what? I was wrong. Let me refocus. And that's, for me, a very, very clear idea of what it's like to live the values and to share those and to make sure that people understand what it is. And I don't necessarily say it, but people feel it.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things even as I hear you, Terry, there's two different things that I'm hearing. First is, jumping back a little bit further, is how manipulative we can be when we think about value, and then how oftentimes the values we put up there are manipulative because they're a marketing ploy to get people to respond to us in a certain way. And
Oh, absolutely.
they're not necessarily a, hey, this is who we are. And then two, the other thing I see in your values versus say Microsoft here or some of the others we've looked at is your values are behaviors. This value, I mean, what behavior is diversity and inclusion? It's not a behavior. If it's that what would be the behavior of diversity and inclusion? Well, we seek to include people of all backgrounds and all, that would be a behavior. Diversity and inclusion is not a behavior. Corporate social responsibility, pursuing that as a behavior, but that in itself is not a behavior. Innovation, even, are we innovative, or is innovation a behavior? And again,
Right.
so the reason it needs to be how do we behave is because guess what? That defines who we are and how we act, not just broad-based statements. And that's, again, another problem that we continue to see again and again and again is broad-based statements that really mean nothing and they have no value to them.
Yes.
And secondly, we put them up there as marketing statements so that we can get people to do something like buy our crap because, hey, look at me. I share your social values. Well, good for you. But your product might be crap. So do I want your product just because you share my social values? No, I don't.
Right.
And there's a whole lot of companies that don't share my social values and I buy their product because it's not crap.
Right. And in fact, you have different values than me, but I can respect your values and I can see them operating and I need your product. I'll go with you. And so to tie that idea up is when you're looking at your values, if you're a company that really wants to examine your values and go, hey, do we live our values? Because the reality is you're living values, whether you got something on the wall or not, you're living values. Are they accidental or are they purposeful? And if they're accidental, you haven't actually looked at how you're behaving. And so what we want to do when we're working with you, whether it's Doug or whether it's us or whether it's another company that does this type of work, we want to have you identify it and define the term vividly in what it looks like, how it looks in action. How does corporate social responsibility look in action? When we know what that looks like in action, that's your value, not just the label. And honestly, it goes like that in when I was a mental health psychologist working in mental health, defining somebody's behavior as depressed. Well, great. Okay, now we got a nice label. I can send it off to the insurance company and then they can deny the claim or they can pay the claim. Most likely they'll deny it because they like to do that. But I'm not a big fan. But right. But what does this depression look like? How do we define? Are they, sluggish? Are they not able to wake up and take action in the morning? Are they agitated? Because there's this idea of agitated depression. Well, they're just a jerk. No, they're in an agitated depression, which basically for me, if we get rid of the word depression, they're self-pitying and they're mad about it because they feel sorry for themselves, but nobody cares. It's like, yeah, I would be a little angry too if nobody cared about me when I'm feeling bad about myself. What actions are they able to take that are going to inoculate them to this self-pity or this depression or feeling sorry for themselves in some way? What can we actually do behaviorally to make a change in that? And that's the idea. Depression, you can't do anything. Oh, they're depressed. Okay. Well, what can we do to make a change? If we don't understand what the behavior looks like, we can't do any kind of intervention to change it. And that's what we really want to look at. And that's what we really want to do as a business. And as I walk into a business and look at, okay, what are your values? Okay, are you living those? Are you actually taking action from those values? Or are you living accidental values and all of your behavior is these other things? There you go. And these other things that really define you in a different way. And so the accidental at the bottom right there, this is how we really behave, but we pretend that these are our values. And we see these values that don't exist as our values, but the rest of the world and our employees see this, right? And the way I'll kind of have people think about that is a company that the management is just horrible. I'm not going to mention any companies. I don't know any right off the top of my head, but I know that there's a lot of, we have the term, people don't leave company, they leave people, right? They leave bad management. Well, that's an example of an accidental value is either micromanaging or bad managing is a value that we have. Why? Because we weren't paying attention. And we want to be much more focused on what are the values that we live by showing up in our behavior. And if they're values that we don't actually want to value, then we need to do some of this work around how we want to behave, which are aspirational, and how we really do behave when we're really focused on the right things. And then who are we letting in our business? And that's the permission to play.
Yep.
And when we can do that, we get very, very clear on how we can actually accelerate our growth, because we're really paying attention to our core, we're paying attention to permission to play, and we're inviting everybody in our business to be more aspirational and grow to this certain place. And I don't think enough businesses do this.
No. Well, and again, I think just hitting on again that idea that it's behaviors in the first place. I don't think enough businesses do that, let alone really set out what are my core values, what are permission to play, what are aspirational, what accidental ones we fall into. But add to that, in honesty, for anyone sitting out there who has a business, runs a business, core value, far too often we approach core values as something we come up with. Your core values, and you said this very clearly before, Terry, is your core values already exist. You have to go discover them, not come up with them. If you come up with them, they're an aspirational value. If they're true of who you are as people and how you behave, they're core. They already have to be true. And so it's really a discovery process of who are the best people in our organization that represent us. And that's where we find what our core values are. Now, they have to also represent the entire leadership. Otherwise, they're not a core value either. Because you're the one as a leader and the leaders that have to live out and pass on the core values. And so if it isn't true of you, it can't be true as a company.
Absolutely.
So we need to grasp, how do we get at core values? We discover, not make up. And that's the problem with the Enrons of the world, and at times the Wells Fargos of the world, who want to say, yeah, do the right thing is our value. Is it? It doesn't look that way. It's not behaving that way. So you didn't discover that within your company. You aspired to that. And your aspirations didn't come to fruition.
Right. All of your goals are aspirational and none of them are core.
Yeah. And it's great to aspire to those things. So it's good to have aspirational values and to live toward them. They're never going to become core, but they're good to have, because you need to know, what are we shooting for? What's the bigger thing that we need to grow in? Sure. But we also need to know what the core is, and we need to actually live by them and not just make them into marketing phrases, which is another, we've been saying that all along. It's like you are duping people by claiming core values that don't exist.
Right. I think the other thing that, I don't know if we said it clearly, but companies that have too many of this and too many of that and too many of this values, or a list of 9 or 15, without separating out which are core and which are aspirational, which are permission to play. We want to separate those out. And I'm a big fan of 3 of each. So you have 9 values in your company, sure, but they're very, very specific that these are our core, these are our permission to play, and these are what we're aspiring to. And so something that we're moving towards, something that just is us, and something that, this is what you need to be part of our team. And so understanding that these three different categories with three underneath each is really how to make your every conversation that you have in your business valuable, because you're focused on those values in those three categories. That's where you can really focus. And then we always want to pay attention to, okay, what's seeping through that we don't want, and how do we actually remove those accidental values that don't move us forward.
Yep. And one of the whys for anyone that might ask that question of why break it in these three categories is because if you just leave 9 values, they're not operationalizable. You can't operationalize them. I don't know if I just created a word or not, but hey, you can't do it. You can't operationalize them because why? Well, how do I hire based on 9 values? Or, I mean, my pool of hirees is like, extraordinarily limited at that point. So I can't actually use them as a hiring category. Two, if 3 of those are aspirational, I can't expect someone to be perfectly showing those when they walk in the door, because we're all shooting for them. None of us is there.
Yeah.
And so I'm just now holding people I hire to something that none of us actually live. And then the play, it's like, I'm sorry, we're not even going to follow through with having an interview if you don't at least have these things at a certain level. Now, again, permission to play in the financial industry should be integrity, right? But it doesn't mean we're top 5% in the industry necessarily integrity-wise. Permission to play in the energy industry should be safety. If you're not going to keep a certain standard of safety, you can't play here. But it's not going to be the main reason I hire you. The main reason I hire you is going to be those core things that, hey, these are true of who you are and how you behave. And so, I mean, whatever that looks like, you got to name those 3, because that's going to be the real determining factor. If all you do is permission to play values, then you're shooting too low. If you do the aspirational values, you're shooting way too high, because none of us have them anyway. It's got to be the core values, because that's the key piece, that if you're not that, you're not us.
Absolutely. Well said.
So, well, we're running toward the end here. So let's, you got any last thoughts to throw in there? We've run a little long today compared to normal. But,
we've been like 2 minutes longer compared to normal. But no, I think really the final thought is this. Re-examine your values, and are they really a value, or are they a marketing statement? Are you really living by them, or do they just sound good? If they just sound good, you're living in accidental values, and you actually need to make a change. And so if you want help with that, we could definitely help. If you want to give it a go on your own, do that. But definitely examine the values that you're running your business by, and would people know it if they saw it? That's what I got.
Yep. That's great stuff, Terry. And I would finish with this. If you're out there and your values look like Microsoft's, Apple's, you're not alone, right? We're not beating you up over your values, but what we do want to do is be direct, as Terry's value is, or my value is, to tell the kind truth, the hard truth, the kind, hard truth. And so we want to tell you those things. We want to point out the problem with those kinds of values, so that you can figure out, hey, what it really is core, so that your company can operate the best it possibly can and get the best results, the best productivity, the best people, keep the best people there, because you got the right ones there. And so we're not here to beat you up, but we are here to tell you the kind, hard truth. We're here to be direct, and we want you to succeed. And so that's our goal. We're thrilled you joined us, and we'd love to have you come back and join us again. We're here every Monday, 1:30, and so we would love to have you come back again. So we'll see you next time.